What is life really like for women in Russia? Any matter concerning women is often emotional and not to be treated with kid gloves. Perhaps due to women's physical and emotional makeup, greater attention should always be given to how they're affected by steps taken and decisions made by stakeholders in every society and country. Russia, a powerful country always in the news, has become a centre of focus regarding how women fare. Hence, in this video, we will attempt to answer the question, what's life really like for women in Russia? We understand that describing a woman's life in a country so vast can be as complex as the country itself. Nevertheless, this video will navigate through different ages, ethnicities, locations and social classes to answer the question. Russian women in history. Women have always been on the front burner in the history of Russia throughout the ages. Since the country itself is diverse, in a country of almost 200 ethnic groups with various religious affiliations, including nominally Christian Orthodox and Islam, among others. In the 18th century, women in Russia were in some ways luckier than their European counterparts. On the other hand, the life of a Russian woman was more difficult. All these came about because the century was a time of social, economic and legal changes in the country. These changes affected women in a way that they had neither imagined nor experienced. That was in the days of Peter the Great, who ruled Russia from 1682 to 1725. In that time, he brought about many changes to Russian culture. He, in fact, altered the Orthodox traditions that the nation had been observing since the 1450s during the fall of the Byzantine Empire. Through the ages, famous women made their marks in Russia's history, and we'd love to tell you a bit more about some of these. Let's start with Anna of Russia. She ruled as regent of the Duchy of Courland between 1711 and 1730, after which she became the Empress of Russia until 1740. For most of her administration, she was under the influence of her uncle, Peter the Great, who encouraged her to engage in the lavish building projects in St. Petersburg and fund the Russian Academy of Science. In the West, where she was known as Anne, her reign was viewed differently from that of Russians, who often referred to her reign as a dark era. We can also talk about Elizabeth of Russia, or Elizaveta Petrovna, who lived between 29th of December 1709 and 5th of January 1762. She reigned as Empress of Russia between 1741 and 1762. Elizabeth remains one of the most popular monarchs in Russia because of her stand against punishment. Not a single person was executed during her reign. She was also admired for her numerous construction projects and her strong opposition to Prussian policies. Another great woman in Russian history was Catherine the Great, who lived between 2nd of May 1729 and 17th of November 1796. She became the Empress of Russia in 1762 and served until she died in 1796. Her ascension to power was a result of a palace coup resulting in the overthrow of her husband, Peter III. Under her 34-year reign, Russia experienced a remarkable renaissance of culture and sciences thanks to the Enlightenment. This led to the founding of numerous new cities, universities and theatres, besides large-scale immigration from the rest of Europe. Before we come to modern women, let's discuss one more ancient woman, and this is Princess Yekaterina Vorontsova-Dashkova. Born on 28th of March 1743, she was an influential noblewoman and remained so until her death on 15th of January 1810. She was a major figure of the Russian Enlightenment. Empress Catherine the Great was her close friend, and she was part of the coup that enthroned Catherine. She wrote on many subjects, and her works were translated into many languages. She was invited by President Benjamin Franklin to become the first female ever to become a member of the American Philosophical Society. Russian women peculiarities. Life is different for different Russian women based on their region, ethnicity, religion and family background. The differences can be so strong that you can't describe the life of Russian women without clarifying these points. For example, a Russian woman from Siberia who was brought up in the Orthodox culture is likely to be living in a village or a small town. But generally, Russian women are educated up to a full secondary level in addition to vocational training. Many of them have a higher education. With these strong educational backgrounds, they're among the world's most educated women. They're thus well positioned to be satisfactorily employed. However, some of them work only as a seller. Nevertheless, the average income of Russian women is somewhat lower than their male counterparts. It can be about 3 times lower sometimes. Family values are very important to Russian women. They're family people and care so much about getting married and raising up to 3 children in their personal apartments. You can see why it's such a big concern that there are more men than women in Russia. Many ladies in some parts of Russia choose not to engage in any official secular work. They're rather busy with housework and caring for their children. To maintain their femininity, however, many Russian women have their own hobbies. Some of these hobbies bring them additional income. For example, those skilled in hair care provide the services of a hairdresser. Some others combine this speciality in nail, hair and eyelash extensions, sewing or knitting. Still, other women, while not secularly employed, have some income from the internet. The main reason many Russian women in some regions refuse to be employed on a full-time basis is that their husbands have a stable high income. Since they don't need to work to live decently, they focus on keeping their homes in all ramifications. Challenges facing women in Russia. There are significant challenges facing women in Russia. Chief among these are domestic violence, sexual harassment and unequal pay. Despite all attempts at addressing these challenges, cultural and political nuances stand in the way. For instance, traditional gender roles are still being emphasized in many areas of Russia. Also, there's a persistent cultural expectation for ladies, regardless of their skills and competencies, to prioritize marriage and motherhood even at the detriment of their career advancement. Even in situations where women are able to navigate their way to corporate or official settings, there's a significant gender gap. In Russia, men often occupy higher paying and more influential positions both in business and government. It's as if there's an unwritten code putting a ceiling on how far a woman can advance in their professional life. Each time they reach positions of power, it's usually a tug of war. In recent years, there have been significant advances in gender equality, but there's still a lot more to be done to ensure that there are equal opportunities and freedoms for both men in all areas of society. Though they legally have equal rights with men, the law is ineffectual. There's no special concession to accommodate the delicate nature and weakness of women that can impact their professional lives in, say, medicine, engineering and architecture, for instance. Sexual harassment and domestic violence. One significant issue affecting many women in Russia is domestic violence. This is a widespread problem in the country as it's in many parts of the world. Unfortunately, in Russia, women are often reluctant to report domestic violence due to fear of retaliation from the aggressor or judgment from their communities. Women who have reported it and had their husbands jailed have also faced hostility from society. New laws, support services and systems for victims of domestic violence are in place. While there are increasing efforts to address it, the same laws have been quite dormant. Sociological surveys have shown that sexual harassment and violence against women have been prevalent in Russia for decades and increased at all levels of society. But the increase became unbearable in the 1990s. In 1993, more than 13,000 rapes were reported, and in 1994, an estimated 14,000 women were killed by their husbands or lovers. That was about 20 times the figure in the US. It was several times more than the figure in Russia 5 years earlier. That same year, about 350,000 other types of crimes were committed against women in 1994, with spousal abuses as the most prevalent. While laws were made to contain this also, the decriminalization of domestic violence in January 2017 by the Russian legislature further exposes these women. According to the law, first offenders whose offences don't cause serious injury cannot stay beyond 15 days in police custody. If convicted and the report is made by a family member, the offender will have a moderate fine imposed on him rather than criminal detention. It's now your turn. How would you describe the life of a woman in Russia? Please, we'd love this conversation to continue in the comment section via your frank opinion. Thank you for watching this video. Please don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell.